All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's break down what's next for these two flyweight contenders, where one of them is in the top 15 and the other is unranked and attempted to get into the rankings himself. And we all know what happened between Sumudaerji and Alex Perez. Sumudaerji decides to kick Alex Perez straight in the family jewels, forcing him to lean over and take all 5 minutes of his allowed time off to recover. And meanwhile, Sumudardi is just sitting, relaxing, not worrying about anything whatsoever until at the final second, the referee waves his hands that this bout has been ruled a no contest. Now, normally I matchmake for each winner and loser, a primary and a secondary, so that's what I'll still do for each fighter. But my secondary choice for Sumudardi and Alex Perez is obvious. It's a rematch. This fight was very competitive. There's not an obvious winner, like similar to the fight that happened a year ago with Song Yadong and Henry Cejudo. Dana White and the rest of us didn't need to see that fight again, even though Cejudo and Song said we need to run this back. They're like, no, we saw Song Yadong winning that fight decisively, and no matter what Henry was going to do, there is no reason to have this rematch back, run it back. But with this fight, it was a first round. It ended with Alex Perez almost submitting Sumudaerji. In the second round, he gets dropped within the first 10, 20 seconds. And then a minute and 20 into the second round, he gets hit with the nut shot. So now let's look at these rankings, shall we? Alex Perez is right there at number 11. And like I said, Sumudaerji is unranked. And if he had won this past weekend, he would be right there in the top 15, ready to take on somebody potentially in the top 10. But let's match make for the primary choice for the ranked fighter first, Alex Perez. Now, what makes sense for him if he's not going to rematch Sumudaerji? This fight makes it is the perfect fight that I can't believe they haven't even gone up against each other or had a bout scheduled for that fact. That man is a former flyweight title challenger himself, Tim Elliott. Now, get this, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Elliott and Alex Perez, throughout their career in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, have shared eight of the same opponents between them two and have never fought each other. Let's go down the list, shall we? We're obviously starting off with the most recent. Tim Elliott has a win over Sumudaerji back in 2023, and we all know that the fight this past weekend ended in a no contest because Sumudaerji kicked Alex Perez in the family jewels. But now let's continue on. Davidson Figueroa, the two-time flyweight champion of the world, guillotine chokes Tim Elliott back in 2019. And the following year, when he became champion, he defended the belt and retained it by guillotine choking Alex Perez. Since we're on the subject of guillotine chokes, how about let's go to all the way one back in 2014, where three-time flyweight title challenger Joseph Benavidez mounted guillotine choke Tim Elliott before the Ultimate Fighter comeback. And on that same subject, it's not a guillotine choke, but Joseph Benavidez finishes Alex Perez with a TKO in the first round, and that was even more decisive. Continuing on, similar losses. These both men have suffered Tim suffered this loss to Muhammad Mokaev by first round arm triangle choke, and Alex Perez suffered the patented Muhammad Mokaev by unanimous decision. Now, here's a difference in opponents. Tim Elliott would lose by unanimous decision to Mateus Nicolau, and then Mateus Nicolau will get knocked out in the second round by Alex Perez in the main event of a fight night. Continuing on, there's Jordan Espinoza, who both Tim Elliott defeated him by unanimous decision, and on the other side, Alex Perez, almost in a mounted position, arm triangle chokes him to basically the referee had to pull him off. And moving on, here's Mark De La Rosa, and this is just like Jordan Espinosa, both Alex Perez and Tim Elliott defeats him. And then last but not least, back in the Ultimate Fighter season in the semifinals, Tim Elliott beat Eric Shelton by unanimous decision to advance to the finals to challenge Demetrius Johnson for the flyweight championship. And then after that, after Eric Shelton made his UFC debut, he would lose to Alex Perez by a three-round unanimous decision. And the last thing that these two have in common, obviously, Tim Elliott, when he went on to the Ultimate Fighter finals to lose by unanimous decision to Demetrius Johnson, he lost flyweight championship opportunity just like Alex Perez lost his flyweight championship opportunity to Davidson Figueroa back when he had an opportunity on short notice to pull off an upset and lost, unfortunately. Now, those is my primary choice for Alex to fight Tim. Now let's move on to Sumudaerji. This one to me is going to be depending on what happens this next coming up weekend in a matchup in the flyweight division between number 15 ranked Bruno Silva defending his ranking spot, just like, oh, wait. He is, yeah, my bad. Sorry about the rankings. Bruno Silva's defending his number 15 ranking spot to challenge Edgar Chairez the same way Sumudaerji went up in the rankings to take Alex Perez's 11th spot. Now, if, let's say hypothetical, Bruno Silva wins this fight and defends his ranking spot, here's why this fight makes so much sense to me. Bruno Silva and Sumudaerji were scheduled to fight back in 2020, and the fight had to be pulled out because Sumudaerji withdrew. So that is not on Bruno Silva's fault. But if they were to reschedule this bout again, it could be settling an old score. And another thing that they have in common, since both of them have suffered decision losses to Charles Johnson, who beat Bruno Silva earlier this year, in fact, and that's his first loss of 2026. And back in, I believe, 2023, Charles Johnson beat Sumudaerji as well. So that's a similar opponent that they both lost to, which makes sense if Bruno Silva can beat the man that he's challenging this weekend, Edgar Chairez. Now, the reason I think Edgar Chairez, if he wins, it would still make sense to take on Sumudaerji. Well, though, let me break this down for you real quickly. This is him in his most recent victory back at UFC Fight Night in Mexico. So he's already off to a 1-0 start this year. Same like Sumudaerji was before this past weekend until he kicked Alex Perez in the Family Jewels. And they had a scheduled bout between Kevin Borjas and Edgar Chairez back in UFC Sphere, where the main event was Muradovashvili and Sean O'Malley. This fight was canceled, and guess who had to step up and fight Edgar Chairez? The flyweight champion of the world, Joshua Van, and he would lose this fight by unanimous decision. Meanwhile, on the other side, Kevin Borjas would go on to face Sumudaerji and would lose by decision. And in that sense, it makes sense to me that since these guys had almost the similar opponent, but because they didn't, he would win on go lose to the flyweight champion of the world. That's why I think this fight makes so much sense, but not as much sense as Tim Elliott and Alex